Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Sleepy Time Tea from Celestial Seasonings. It is so calming, soothing. Not that I need to be soothed, but I need to maybe calm down because I thought of a little thing I want to work on, and it got me excited. So I thought I'd share it with you. And it's a little kind of a project in a loose sense, a way to keep my goals organized, and it's called Poets and Pre Raphaelites. Sounds a little bit like Pride and Prejudice, not really. But anyway, which really doesn't have much to do with that. But I was just thinking of a few things that I wanted to work on in my reading and writing life that, and finding a way to pull it together and find just, you know, like I did with Tea and Mystery, I found a way to just kind of cover the mystery novels I read every month into one little feature. I thought, well, maybe I could do that and combine things that I want to do in something separate. So one of the things that I've had trouble with is writing in general. But I used to I used to work on a blog, which I haven't been working on in a while. I probably could bring it back, but I just haven't yet. But I used to write poetry, and I'm not saying I was a great poet, and I don't have to be. But I did get published, so I wasn't terrible, I guess. Recently I had a friend who asked me to write a poem for a little online event, and I didn't come up with anything, and I felt terrible. And I thought, no, I need to work on this so that if this comes up again, I'm going to be able to share something. So I thought, well, what do I do usually when I need to get, I don't want to say inspiration, but just kind of motivation, I guess. One of the things I do is, well, read more poetry. So that's one thing. But also I read a lot of biographies on creative types, but especially writers, poets, painters. When I do that, I tend to just get moving somehow. It just, you get that little flow of, oh, look, this is how they work, this is what they did, and then I start my own thing. I don't know, maybe that'll work this time. So I thought one of the things I want to do is just read more poems and read more writerly and poetry biographies. And I have so many of them, so that's easily done. They don't necessarily have to always work in tandem with Pre Raphaelites, but a lot of them will. So I mean, I could read like next month I'm reading a biography about Sylvia Plath, and I'm sure I could find a connection between the two of them, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Although I want to start this whole deal in April, even though I might have some things to do in March with it. I want to officially begin in the spring. I think that sounds like a great way to start. It's all fresh. And I think I do kind of connect spring with Pre Raphaelites a little bit, kind of. Definitely not winter, although I'm sure they have some winter scenes. Yeah, so the Pre Raphaelites, that's another thing. Over the years, I've read a lot of biographies and a lot of works about the paintings of the Pre Raphaelites and the people involved in their lives, and I love that so much, but I haven't been doing as much of that recently, and I have a number of books that I want to either get back into or start all over again or reread, and I thought, well, that could be part of the project. I could read more about the actual Pre Raphaelites. And when I talk about them, there were a number of founders, which I think purists would say those were the Pre Raphaelites. I don't know what they would say, but personally, I think it's really anybody who painted inspired by their style. And that went on through a good portion of the Victorian period. And you could even say some people nowadays, but I wouldn't call them, because they didn't, you know, if they didn't really overlap with the lives of the originals, then I probably wouldn't put them in there. Anyway, so yeah, any of the people, whose paintings or lives intersected with them, I could either read their biographies, I could read their written works if they had written works, and of course I could look at any visual arts that I can get a hold of, which thankfully through the internet you can get hold of anything. But I also have art books. So that leads to a lot of different side goals that I've had that can pull it together, you know? All these different books I've been wanting to read, and I'm like, oh, I never find the time to do it because I can't fit it in with any of my the challenges that I join up with, which I'll still do, by the way. Even if I might be able to find connections with Pre Raphaelites. Even Janos in July, I can find connections. But I want to just have a separate catch-all for this particular type of reading. And so I've thought about, okay, well, what were they inspired by? So, or what were some of their paintings depicting? So that could have been the Greek myths, Homer. Rossetti was big on Dante Alighieri, which I'm probably not pronouncing right, but probably because they had the same first name. So, you know, but so I could read some of that. I haven't read anything by Dante Alighieri, and that could be a way to start. Boccaccio was another one. Shakespeare, a lot of Shakespeare depictions of Shakespeare scenes. The Bible, you know, Tales of King Arthur, which I'm not that into, but you never know, you know, chivalry and all that. A lot of poets that were inspirations for the Pre Raphaelites, for instance, Keats, Byron, Shelley, the Romantics, you know, Coleridge, Longfellow, Tennyson, big time, Browning, Christina Rossetti. So these are people who either came before them or they knew somehow. So I could read any of these poets or their biographies, which is great. I could read works by people who were inspired by them, like Oscar Wilde or Yeats, or, I mean, even Anne of Green Gables, for goodness sakes. You could kind of make a connection, but I did read her last year, so I'm not sure. A.S. Byatt, even. So there's a lot already that I can read, and a lot of these writers or biographies are in my TBR already. So there goes a lot of inclusion there. I can find ways to, you know, connect things, but these are a lot of connections already. So here's another one. People who were in their lives, either models, relatives, in-laws, some sort of relation to them. Maybe they did artwork for their literature. So, I mean, almost any Victorian writer, there's probably a connection. But I was thinking Dickens had connections. John Ruskin, obviously. Virginia Woolf. Wilkie Collins. Anthony Trollope. What do you mean Anthony Trollope? Well, look at this. Orley Farm. This is by John Everett Millais, who was one of the originals. So there you go. But he also, it's not in this book, but Millais also did illustrations for Trollope's books inside his books as well. I don't have a lot of them, but he did. So that's amazing, right? So there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people, and I'm probably not even mentioning photographers. Goodness. There will be more mentions as time goes on, obviously. And feel free to suggest any of your own that I haven't mentioned, that I just, even if I thought of them in the past, I haven't mentioned them right now. They drew a lot of inspiration, and, you know, they depicted a lot of history. A lot of history. Medieval history, ancient history, biblical history, Scottish history, Tudor times, Stuart times. So that's a lot of stuff that I read about. So that's fantastic. Yes, it's a little bit narrow in scope when it comes to a lot more European depictions, a lot of, and sometimes maybe Israel. I think at least one of the artists got involved in the Arab world a little bit, so that there could be some connections there. William Morris, who came a little bit later, was into Icelandic, but that's still kind of Europe, stories. And so yes, there may be types of literature that I'm looking to read, or nonfiction that I'm looking to read that won't fit in. But that's okay, because I could still read books and not connect them with the Pre Raphaelites. They just won't be in that particular feature video month or whatever. Even nature writing. There's a lot of nature. Specifically, I mean, there's animals, so I love reading about animals, but specifically flowers. The language of flowers, the Victorian ways of communicating were featured heavily in their art. A lot of symbolism. So I could read my nature writing and still feel like I'm involved in this kind of project. So you may say, what about your tea and mystery? Is that going to be connected at all? Probably not very often. However, one of the Bryant and May books I read did have something to do with the Pre-Raphaelite art. At one point. At least once. It's been a while, but I remember that. I don't remember which one, but I remember it being mentioned at least in one book. And even, let's make it really a big stretch, because I like to make big stretches here. Sherlock Holmes. I know, right? I mean, what does he have to do with really not much of anything, except there was at least one time where Sherlock Holmes mentions George Meredith, who was a model for the Death of Chatterton, and that is considered basically a Pre Raphaelite painting. So guess what? I can even sort of do that. Like, I mean, sometimes I know, sometimes it will be maybe too much of a stretch. I don't want to get to the point where I really, really can't convince myself or you guys that this is actually a connection. But I think that there is a lot of my TBR that can be brought in there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make, at least once a month, I'm going to make a, what's it called again? Poets and Pre Raphaelites. I think I'm going to keep it at that name. If it sounds kind of clunky to you, let me know if there's something very similar I could do. But I think I'm going to stick with that, and make a hashtag out of it. Why not? And it'll be fun, because last year I wanted to talk about the Pre Raphaelites in October, and I didn't really get a chance. What's that? Oh, I didn't really get a chance to, because I was just reading so many other things, and then I felt sort of like I really missed out. So I know in October I'll probably have more to say about the Pre Raphaelites at that point. Great, but I can do that. I can talk about them before, during, and after, because I don't see this ending unless I get really bored of it. But I don't think I will. There's just so much I can include in this. So let me know what you think. If this is a fun goal to you at all. I know not everyone is into that kind of art, and that's fine. But it is something that I've always, well, for many years I've been into, and I love to read about that subject. So now I have a goal that is a little more solid, just a little more. So let me know what you think, and also if you want to join in some way, whether it's just through comments, or if you want to use that hashtag, if you want to talk about books that you've read and its connections or anything, just let me know. I'm not really, a big fan of organizing big events right now, because I don't really think I have enough of a following to do so. So it's just kind of a personal project, but you all are welcome to join in. Just like anything, when I'm reading something, you're always welcome to join in. So let me know what you think. I keep saying let me know what you think, but I am curious. So that's all for now. I will update as time goes on. This is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book and art and poetry filled day. Goodbye.